Hello, super heavy tank commanders of the Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum. Today we will be doing a deep dive of one of my lists, a super heavy list, as you can see, in the Dawn of War deployment on Terrain Layout 5. Before we get started with our map study, we're going to go over a few basic concepts in the list. So when we're looking at deployment in general for any guard list or any list in general, we have to look for a few things. One of the things we have to consider is looking for where the best firing lanes are. Where can we put our hard-hitting tanks so that they can be the most relevant early on in the game? We don't want tanks taking 2 or 3 turns to get somewhere. We want them to be able to access a firing lane very easily on turn 1. Next up is looking at something more defensive. Where's the best hiding place for a super heavy against an anti-tank list? So let's say you're going up against Tau and the enemy list has 3 hammerheads and 2 of the flying missile tanks that are on hammerhead chassis. I think they're called Skyray gunships. They have a ton of strength 14 missiles. So if you're going up against a list like that, where can we hide the super heavy so that it doesn't get shot on turn 1? Let's say the opponent is playing a Knight Castellan and they happen to be running that detachment where they get Titanic Duel. I think it is Questoris Companions, and they get bonuses against Titanic units and Walker units and the such. So the Knight Castellan has a Volcano Lance, which has a very long range, high strength, high AP, and the Knight Castellan also can bring up to 2 Shieldbreaker missile launchers. And those have a very long range of 72 inches, and they have anti-Titanic dev wounds. So there are a few enemies that are extremely deadly at range against super heavies. Melee armies, I don't really worry about because you'll see in the deployment that we go through how we screen against an early melee attack using scouts and good deployment positioning. So when we're looking for a place to hide the super heavy, mainly it's to hide the super heavy against an opponent's ranged anti-tank units. So things like the Gladiator Lancer or the Repulsor Executioner, they are also dangerous threats. Things like the Vindicator doesn't matter that much because although it can do a lot of damage, it has a 24-inch range. So if you deploy properly, it'll be very unlikely that they'll be able to hit you on turn 1. So next, where does the enemy want to stage? Part of winning games is denial, knowing where the enemy wants to stage so that you deploy in such a way that if the enemy does stage there, then you can hit them. So a lot of armies like orcs, blood angels, they like to stage. They like to hide their units behind ruins that are kind of close to your ruins. And since infantry can walk through walls, what they do is they'll take 1 turn to just stage. They'll just prepare and get behind the ruin, and next turn they can come out of the ruin and hit you very hard. But you want to prevent that. So on the turn that the enemy stages, you want to be able to hit them. That way you don't get caught up in their Wa, which is their orcs go turn, where they get a bunch of buffs to their durability, to their charge. They can advance and charge, so you don't want to get hit by melee threats like that. So you want to know where the enemy wants to stage so that you can hit them first. On their staging turn, you hit them. That way, they don't have a very good go turn. On their go turn, they have to deal with your little trap units that just came and shot them. And if you manage to take out a bunch of their units, they're not going to hit you back as hard on their go turn. There are some armies like Space Wolves and World Eaters that will have a first turn go turn because they have scouts and they hit very hard. So sometimes they'll try to move block you as well. And so you want to make sure that you're trying to counterplay the enemy as much as you're trying to play your scoring game. And speaking of your scoring game, the next concept we're going to discuss is how can you get onto two objectives on turn one with bait units with only move, 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 and disembark. The reason I specify these conditions is because if you advance, then you can't action. Now, in Hammer of the Emperor, which is the list we're going to be using for our discussion and list purposes, because I think Hammer of the Emperor is the only detachment you should be playing if you're playing a super heavy, due to making it easier to move super heavies. And due to a lot of the stratagems being really good, so that if you do bring Lord Solar and a super heavy, you get an extra CP, and you actually have stratagems that you can spend CP on to get a bunch of different tanks into locations where you want them to go. Now, certain detachments, there might be one really good stratagem that you're just trying to spam. Like a mechanized detachment, there's clear and secure that gives you full rerolls against enemies on objectives, and that's one stratagem you're going to try to use as much as possible when it comes up, because that's where a lot of your damage comes from. Hammer of the Emperor is not like that. Other than giving bonus AP with one of the stratagems, most of the stratagems are all movement related. You have fall back and shoot, trash through, which means you can drive vehicles through ruined walls, including super heavies. You have advance and shoot. You have ignore modifiers to hit, but that one has a lot of different conditions that is kind of rare to come up in games. And then you have one that reduces incoming damage by one, and that one's 2 CP. It's also pretty rare to use that because you have a smoke stratagem that's in most cases more effective than ablative plating, which is the 2 CP minus 1 to incoming damage. So you do have advance and shoot, but you can't advance an action. So on turn one, let's say you pull cleanse, which is performing an action on two no man's land objectives. And well, that's for maximum cleanse. And let's say you pull establish locus. You can establish a locus in the center of the battlefield. So that's something you can score turn one if you are positioned properly. You could also get area denial, which is being near the center of the battlefield and without opponents being in the center of the battlefield. That is so easy to score if you're going first on turn one. So if you're going first on turn one, you better score maximum area denial. If you don't, then you're just bad. So you should be prepared to score these action and location secondaries. And so you want to have relatively cheap units. Sure, you could put a super heavy and you could action with a super heavy and just push it right into the center objective on turn one. You can do that. But most likely, the turn after that, your super heavy is going to get destroyed. You're going to lose the game against a decent opponent and not a complete noob, right? And against a non-horde army. Against a horde army, you might actually want to push your super heavy and cover the entire middle objective first. The reason why is because horde armies generally don't do a lot of damage to high toughness, high save vehicles, and they generally have a lot more bodies that have a lot more total OC than your Hammer of the Emperor vehicle focus army will. And so against a horde army, you might want to push out your super heavy, but against like 90% of opponents, you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure you have cheap units like Scout Sentinels, for example, Adelan Rough Riders, Ratlings, things that you can just put on an objective, 60 points or cheaper, and you could perform an action and get maximum VP, whatever cards you pull on turn one. Also, one thing I didn't mention in this list is if you pull no prisoners or you pull mark for death. Now, they changed mark for death in the chapter approved tournament missions. And in the past, the opponent selects three of their units if you destroy one or more of the 3 units, then you get 5 VP. Now you can select what is called a gamma target. So you select one of the enemy's units and you destroy it. And if you do that, then you get 2 VP instead of 5. So if you pull Mark for Death turn 1, you want to make sure that if an enemy has an infiltrator or a scout in the midboard, that you can select it as your Mark for Death target and destroy it. If you pull Assassinate, for example, and they have scouts, or like let's say they have a combi lieutenant, or they put a Calidus assassin and they infiltrate it. Make sure that you're in a position where you can hit anywhere in no man's land. So if you pull both Mark for Death and Assassinate, and the opponent, let's say, has a Calidus hiding in a ruin in one of the no man's land ruins, then you can mark that Calidus and score Assassinate and Mark for Death and score 7 VP on, or I think Assassinate is 4. I'm not sure, but anyway, you can score 6 to 7 VP on turn 1. Whatever cards you pull, that's how you win the game if you're playing Astra Militarum. Hammer of the Emperor is a really fast detachment. You've got to be able to score your secondaries because each tank only has 2 to 3 OC, objective control. The Rogel has 5, your Baneblade has 8, but other than that, a standard infantry model has 2 OC. So 5 infantry models can out OC a Baneblade. So make sure that you position properly so that you can score and be beating the enemy on secondaries as well as denying them, right? So next, how do you move if you go on turn 1 to force the enemies into the firing lanes? So against ranged armies, if you're getting shot at, you can shoot back at them. Pretty simple. Against melee armies, when they do get into engagement, will they be in your other tank's firing lanes, or are they going to be hidden from return fire? Meaning, after you move, make sure that you are more than an inch away from a ruin so that enemies can't just fight your tank through the ruin wall and you can't do anything about it. You got to make sure that the enemy has to move out. That way you can overwatch them and then they charge. Maybe they destroy whatever they charge. Next turn you can clap back, you can counterattack and trade up into those units. So make sure after you deploy that you're forcing enemies into your firing lanes instead of having them fight on their terms, right? Okay, next. Which tanks have the option to use crash through? Is there a way to deploy such that you don't have to use crash through? And then the next question kind of goes along with that. Which tank should use advance and shoot, and which should use move, move, move so you can best stack and combine firepower? You want to get your tanks up the board as fast as possible. Sometimes a normal move is enough as long as you don't have to drive around a wall. So for that tank, you can use crash through. Maybe another tank can make it onto an objective with just move, move, move. And let's say it has flamers, and you don't necessarily need to take aim on it. Give it move, 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 have it go on an objective, and stay there as an overwatch threat with your flamers. Maybe one of your tanks are deployed a little further back, you need to advance and shoot. So if you can use multiple stratagems on the same turn, you can have a pretty early go turn, especially if you're using Lord Solar to generate an extra CP, which Lord Solar is auto include if you're bringing a super heavy. And we go to our list, which is the Speed Striker list. That's the name I gave it. It's for a 2,000 point list. We have a Baneblade, which is 450 points. We have the Lord Solar Command Blob. Why? Because currently Lord Solar is the only Astra Militarum unit that can order super heavies. The super heavies do not have the squadron keyword, but Lord Solar can order Titanics. And so you take Lord Solar, which normally has a 6-inch order range, but you attach Lord Solar to a command blob, which consists of a Cadian command squad and 10-man Cadian shock troops battle line unit. So that comes out to a total of 260 points, and the Master Vox in the command squad allows Lord Solar to transmit his orders up to 24 inches away, which is more than what you'll need. Next, we have two Tech Priest engine seers. You need one for the Baneblade, and the other one I have a fake super heavy, which is a Rogaldorn tank commander with the Indomitable Steed enhancement, which is a 6-up feel no pain. So have the toughness 12 with the 18 wounds, 6-up feel no pain. Now you have a 4-up invul from the Tech Priest engine seer, and you have the option to smoke for 1 CP. On the opponent's turn, you always generate a CP, so you always have the option to smoke at least one tank if you're not overwatching. Now, if you saved CP from the previous turn because Lord Solar generates another one, then you can overwatch and use smoke. So the Rogaldorn tank commander can become very durable, so we bring two Tech Priest engine seers. Next up, we have a Hellhound. Auto include if you're bringing a Baneblade. Why? The Baneblade main gun is AP -2. So if you're firing at enemy tanks in cover, they're going to be saving on a 3-up, and that is not good for you. So if the enemy has a 2-up save, the Baneblade will put it on a 4-up save, which is not that good. Which is why we have our next unit, which is the Leman Russ Exterminator. What the Leman Russ Exterminator does is adds AP to whatever other unit fires at the same target it fired its exterminator autocannons at. The ability is called Withering Hail, so it essentially adds an extra AP to whatever shoots at the same target. So let's say the opponent has a knight, has 28 wounds, and the Leman Russ Exterminator fires on it, and then the Baneblade can fire on it, and its main gun now has AP -3. The Demolisher starts with AP -3, so it goes up to AP -4. The last cannons go to AP -4. With the cover stripped, AP -4 puts a 2-up on a 6-up. So it's good against tanks. It's good against knights in cover. So let's say your Hellhound is not available to strip cover against a knight. A knight has a 3-up base save and a 5-up invul save. So if they're in cover, then your Baneblade's -2 AP is insufficient. So you either need to strip cover or add AP. So having both the Hellhound and the Leman Russ Exterminator gives you options against enemies in cover. And if you combine them together, you can actually add a ton of AP to make the Baneblade more effective. Now, the Leman Russ Exterminator itself has AP -1 on its autocannons. But what you can do, what I like to do is this. I like to use the Hellhound and use longer range weaponry. Like the Hunter Killer missile, for example. All it has to do is hit, doesn't have to do any damage to strip cover. And then I used a stratagem that adds extra AP to the Leman Russ Exterminator. Now, the Leman Russ Exterminator is firing with bonus AP. And after it fires, now every other tank that fires at the same target has bonus AP from the Exterminator. So that's kind of the firing order combo you use against heavier enemies that won't go down just with one tank's worth of shooting. Next up, we have our speed part of the list. Now, everything can be fast in Hammer of the Emperor, but our transports make the list extremely aggressive. So we have a Chimera, and we start with Catachan mortars embarked inside. Why the hell would you put indirect fire mortars inside a Chimera? Now, I'll tell you what, this is the trick. You put the mortars inside the Chimera when you declare your battle formations. You deploy it, and before the game starts, you alternate making scout moves. So what you do is you scout the Chimera out 6 inches because Catachans have 6-inch scout. So you scout the Chimera out. Your turn comes around. You could be going first or you could be going second. But your turn comes around. You disembark the Catachan mortars from the Chimera. The Chimera hasn't moved officially because it made a scout move, but that's not a normal move. So your mortars can disembark and then make another move. And it can shoot as well. And so the mortars disembark, and you get a slight bonus. A mortar's base is 60 millimeters, and you can disembark up to within, fully within 3 inches of your transport. So 3 inches, so 25 millimeters is an inch. That's 75 millimeters. So you're getting an extra 15 millimeters, a little less than an inch of movement from disembarking. Then you get to move again. And so the catachan mortars can go pretty far and also boost the chimera. So the chimera makes the mortars go faster, the mortars make the chimera go faster. And then what you do is you have ogrins nearby. Due to the size of the hull, you don't actually have to move that far to be fully within 3 inches. Then you embark in the transport in the chimera, right? So you scout out the chimera, drop off the mortars, embark the ogrins, and then now your chimera can move. And so your chimera can make its 10-inch move. Maybe you put move, move, move. Maybe you put advance and shoot on the chimera. When you advance and shoot, you can also fire with the firing deck. So 2 of your 3 ogrins can fire out of the firing deck. So ogrins want to be within 9 inches because you get rapid fire that essentially doubles the shots of the Ripper gun. And if you have take aim on the chimera, the take aim on the chimera transfers over to the firing deck. So these ogrins that normally cannot get ordered, now 2 of the ogrins can fire through the firing deck and be hitting on 3s instead of 4s. So you stick the ogrins in the chimera. Now, if the chimera is destroyed, God forbid, or Emperor forbid, because we're talking 40k here, the ogrins can get out behind the chimera and create a screen for more important vehicles like your Baneblade. Next, we have Taurox Kazarkin. In Hammer of the Emperor, it is ridiculously fast. You can cross the entirety of most boards and be in the opponent's deployment zone turn 1. Now, if they don't screen you properly. The Taurox moves 12 inches. Its datasheet ability is that you can disembark units after it has advanced. In the detachment of Hammer of the Emperor, you auto advance 6 inches, so you're already moving 12 plus 6 inches, plus you get the disembark distance, plus you can put move, move, move on it, and the Khazar can have a 6-inch scout move, so you can move 6 inches for free in the beginning. The Taurox with the Khazarkin are extremely powerful. Now, Khazarkin have to be within 3 inches of the opponent to use the Melta Mine. And normally people take 2 Melta guns, and in order to be in Melta range, you want to be within 6 inches. So it is a very short range unit, and the Taurox is the perfect transport to deliver the Khazarkin. Now we take 2 Scout Sentinels because rerolling hit rolls of 1 is amazing, especially on a super heavy like the Baneblade. It's good for the Rogal. It's good for everything except for a Flamer tank like your Hellhound. So having 2 Scout Sentinels is amazing, and me personally, I like to bring Gaunt's Ghost. The points went down to 100 points for a squad of 6 guys with a total 13 wounds, upbeat downy, meaning at the end of the opponent's turn, if the Gaunt's Ghosts are not engaged, you can put it into reserves and then you can bring it down next turn. And how the army rule works is that when an officer disembarks from a transport or is set up, it can give orders. So Gaunt's Ghost can order swap with Lord Solar if needed. So in my list, I don't necessarily have dedicated regiment orders. So the Cadian Command Squad gives you 1 regiment order. But let's say Khazar can get out of your Taurox and it's further than 24 inches away from Lord Solar. The Khazarkin can self-order on top of getting another order from an officer. So how it works is this. In your movement phase, you disembark the Khazarkin. And at the end of your movement phase, you bring things out of reserve. So you put Gaunt's Ghost within 6 inches of your Khazarkin, and you order the Khazarkin to take aim. Now, the shooting phase comes up, and the Khazarkin's datasheet ability says at the start of any phase. So it already got ordered in the movement phase by Gaunt's Ghost, and Gaunt's Ghost gives you 2 orders, so it can order itself to take aim as well. And then when the Khazarkin come up to the shooting phase, you can give it first rank fire, second rank fire. And you could really add a ton of damage output. If you take Adeline Rough Riders, Gaunt's Ghost can order swap from move, move, move to fixed bayonets. You can order swap scout sentinels if you really want to, from move, move, move to take aim, for example, because scout sentinels have the regiment and squadron keyword. So it can take, for example, an order from a Rogaldorn tank commander, and then it can get that order swapped by Gaunt's Ghosts. So Gaunt's Ghosts, it's pretty durable. It's really good at scoring action secondaries. It's really good at scoring location secondaries. It has lone ops, stealth, fights first. It has benefit of cover built in. It's just an all around amazing unit. And it's not necessarily good in Hammer of the Emperor compared to other detachments. It's not necessarily better, but it still has value as a really good secondary scoring unit. So I do love bringing Gaunt's Ghost, and there are a lot of different ways you can use it. I personally like to use it to hunt enemy scoring units. So let's say the enemy has a Calidus assassin that infiltrated a little bit too far. Gaunt's Ghost also has infiltrate. So if I go first, I can take their infiltrator out turn one. It's like you're not scoring anymore. And let's say the opponent has a combi lieutenant that gives the enemy rerolls of wounds against you on an objective that they select, right? Let's say that objective they select is an objective that you want. You're going to want to destroy the combi lieutenant. And so Gaunt's Ghost can destroy the combi lieutenant. It's really good for hunting lone ops as well as doing everything else I told you. So Gaunt's Ghost is a very flexible unit. I love having it. So next we're going to get to the actual discussion of the map study. And we have two different deployment options. Here is the more aggressive deployment option. And the reason why it's more aggressive is because we stick our Baneblade right here. And you can see that it's parked backwards. And I'll tell you why very shortly. In this position, the Baneblade can actually get fired upon from the right side of the map. And it can get fired upon from the middle part of the map. So against a dedicated ranged anti-tank army, let's say they even have 3 Doomsday Arcs, you might not want to deploy like this. But against most other armies that are not dedicated ranged anti-tank, then this is a perfectly fine deployment and you're going to have a lot of options from here. So why we parked it backwards is that with a regular move of, let's see, 9¼ inches, so less than 10 inches, you can back it up to the edge of this ruin here. And then you can rotate the turret to stick out. Now, when the barrel sticks out, you can draw a line of sight from the barrel. So you can fire up here, you can fire into here, and you can also fire across no man's land. So this is a very good position for the Baneblade to be in an offensive role. Now, another thing you can do is use the crash through stratagem and get onto that objective. You can put 8 OC on that objective on turn one if you wanted to. Do I recommend it? No. But in certain situations, let's say you have to be in the center to get a better line of sight, let's say into this area. Something's hiding inside that blue ruin. You want to fire at it. Maybe you do want to move to get a better angle if you have something to fire at. And let's say it's their only Tyrannofex and you really want to destroy it, yeah, you can do that. You know, once you destroy their Tyrannofex and they don't really have any other anti-tank units in a Tyrannid's army in particular, then your Baneblade is perfectly fine being in the midboard. It's probably not going to get destroyed by much of anything else in range. So there are situations where you might want to be doing that, or you can just enter that ruin, stay safe, have cover, and stick your little barrel out. We put our Taurox next to the Baneblade, and from this position, you can see that the Taurox can hit all the way over here. It can hit here, and it can even hit all the way up to here. So these two ruins are ruins that the enemy wants to stage either inside or behind the ruin. So you want to make sure that especially if your Baneblade is gonna be this close to the enemy's ruin, where it could even be charged from out of the ruin. Before that Baneblade enters here, you want to make sure that you have cleared enemies out from wherever they want to stage. And a perfect unit for doing that is Kazarkin. You send your Taurox up, drop your Kazarkin out, shoot the shit out of the enemy, and make sure that they're distracted by the Kazarkin. Maybe you even kill them and they just are not there anymore. And so that's why we put our Taurox here. The Taurox has a scout move, so it can move out. Now, remember, you can't park on top of a ruined wall, and that's why we have our Taurox coming over to the left a little bit this way. And then it can take a 12-inch move, 6-inch advance, 3-inch from move, 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 and then it can drop off. So you could see here, we could put Hazardkin all the way into the opponent's deployment zone. So Taurox are really fast, and I do like to have them next to the Baneblade so that I can clear threats away from the Baneblade so the Baneblade is not getting hit and it can do what it does, which is just sit in the middle and make sure nothing ends up on no man's land where you want to be so you can be scoring points. And now let's talk about the Rogel Dorn. We have two Rogel Dorns, but we only have one in the list. And this is because there are two options of where to deploy. You can stick a Rogel Dorn here and work in conjunction with the Taurox to clear out the top left corner and make it extra safe for the Baneblade here. Now, with a move, 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 the Rogel Dorn can make it onto that objective, where if any opponents have range threats up here, it can't fire through that ruin. And so you can sit here. If the enemy wants to contest you on the ruin, they would have to enter this ruin. Once they step into that ruin, you can overwatch them because now they can be seen from outside the ruin. The Rogaldorn is a pretty decent overwatching tank. It's better for overwatching a little bit heavier units, but it's also good at overwatching chaff units as well. So this is a good place to keep the Rogel Dorn. If you use advance and shoot, you can actually get past this blue ruin, be hidden from ranged attacks on the right side of the ruin, and you should have a line of sight well into their deployment zone, into this area behind the blue ruin where enemies might want to stage. So you do have a good line of sight here, working in conjunction with the Taurox. You should be able to clear out this whole top left corner with the Rogaldorn and the Taurox, or at least do enough damage to really cripple the enemy if you do go first. So this Taurox, the way it's moving is I'm not using advance and shoot. There's no point. It's just there to disembark units after advancing. I don't really care if I don't get to fire with two autocannons and a Stormbolter. It's not going to do much. So the Taurox, I'm not using crash through, I'm not using advance and shoot. It's just simply advancing and using its data sheet to drop Kazarkin off. The Rogel Dorn is using advance and shoot in this particular scenario. Now, we can also deploy it on the other side and use our Baneblade as more of a distraction Carnifex. Keep it here. Maybe the enemy's like eyeing it down, trying to destroy it, and meanwhile, the entirety of your army is moving right. So maybe you deploy aggressively like this, minus this Rogaldorn, and the enemy thinks, wow, you're really going to be pushing the left side. Why? Because you have a super heavy here, right? No, you're not. What you do is this Taurox can actually scout up this way, pretend like it's going for this objective, and then swing all the way right and hit something behind this ruin, right? The Kazarkin are close enough to even mine somewhat into the left side of this ruin. And so the Taurox can swing way over, trick the enemy. The Baneblade comes out, or maybe the Baneblade goes toward the middle this time to stay further away from the left side, right? And the Baneblade is kind of blocking the enemy from getting to your Rogel Dorn, to your Leman Russ Exterminator, to your Chimeras on the right side. So there are a couple different choices here where you can push the left side and use your Baneblade as a threat, or you can just put it in the middle and use it as a deterrent or a distraction for the enemy. You're putting 8 OC on that middle objective, and your entire army is just pushing deep into the enemy's deployment zone and just flanking around all the way on the right side. So there's a few ways to play this. We keep a Tech Priest Engine Seer next to the Baneblade all the time because it's nice to have 4-up invuls. And I like to keep a Tech Priest Engine Seer next to the Rogel Dorn. So this one is placed incorrectly. This one should be right here. So let's say we deploy the Rogel Dorn on the right side. What is a Chimera doing? Okay. Well, what we can do is this. The Chimera makes a 6-inch scout move, which makes it end up right there. It disembarks the Catachan mortars. One of them gets onto that objective, puts 2 OC on it. Maybe you can action with it if you don't need to fire indirectly at anything. Let's say you're playing against knights. It's not really worth shooting. Do an action, right? If you can. And after that, there should be Ogrins next to the Chimera that move right up, embark in the Chimera, and then with just a regular move, you can get to the top of the objective and use your hull to prevent the enemy from getting onto the objective. So you have 2 OC up there, you have 2 OC down here. And so the enemy will have to either kind of charge around you to get OC onto the objective, or they're just going to straight up have to destroy you and then consolidate. Oops. So that's how the Chimera plays. If you use move, 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 it can move a little bit higher. That way it can get angles behind the ruin. And you can see here that the Hellhound with an advance and shoot can fire behind the ruin. So let's say the Rogel Dorn is not advancing on the left side. Let's say the enemy is staging hard on the right side of the map. Then instead of advancing the Rogel Dorn, you can either deploy it on the right side, or if you have it deployed on the left side, you just take objective and put OC on it so you can score something next turn. So the Hellhound, you can flush the enemy out. And let's say there's a bunch of enemies that scouted into the ruin. They're wholly within the ruin. They have benefit of cover. The Hellhound can strip that cover. The Chimeras can blast at it. And it can get close enough to where the Ripper guns get the bonus shots. Now the enemy doesn't have cover. You also have your last gun array, your Chimera weapons. You have your Hunter Killer. You have your heavy stubber. So you have a lot of firepower between the Hellhound and the Chimera. And like I said, the Taurox can wrap around and the Khazarkin can drop off right here and also fire behind that ruin or into the ruin. So this area that the enemy really wants to stage in, it is no longer safe. Why? Because we expect the enemy to stage here and we made it so that it's not safe. If we see a bunch of enemies crowding around the left side of the ruin, we just put a Rogel Dorn or Chimera and we make the left side not safe for the enemy to beat, right? And so there's one place all the way up here where I put my little comment where the enemy wants to stage. That's kind of far and the space is limited there. So if the enemy stages there, whoop-de-doo, your Chimera is using its hull to move block. And if you do happen to have a Rogel Dorn, it's going to be up right behind it. And do notice here that the Chimera is further than an inch from the ruin wall, so you're not getting hit from through the ruin wall. The enemy's going to have to, if they want to engage you, they're going to have to come out and shoot you, or they're going to have to come out and charge you. Either way, whatever happens, your Rogel Dorn can clap back next turn. Let's say you don't have this Rogel Dorn, you deployed it on the left side, right? It doesn't matter, because whatever comes out to fight that Chimera, your Hellhound can fire at it. This Leman Russ Exterminator's in a good position to counterattack. The Baneblade from here can fire all the way back here. So if your Chimera is, let's say, here, not a little bit further out, but a little bit back here, you see that the Chimera is in your own firing lane. So if the enemy comes out to fight you, now your Baneblade can fire. So let's say they destroy the Chimera and they consolidate onto that objective. Your Baneblade can fire onto the front of that objective. So the Chimera being right here is perfect for baiting the enemies out. Anything that's inside that ruin that comes out is going to die next turn. Sure, you're going to lose a chimera. You have ogrins that you can put onto the objective behind it, right? So, you're putting more OC on the objective, and whatever hits your chimera is going to get clapped back really hard. You have an exterminator. Now, look at the way I position. Wherever the Taurox is, the Hellhound actually has line of sight. So the Hellhound can strip cover before anything else fires. So the Hellhound can fire somewhere into here and into here. These light blue X's inside the pink. By the way, when I made this, I just had contrasting colors. This has nothing to do with LGBT. I just realized right now these are LGBT colors. Okay? And also, this has nothing to do with newborn babies because these are also colors for newborn baby clothing. These are just contrasting colors. That's not green or something else, right? So, anyway, these light blue X's, they are areas that are kill zones, which means practically your whole army can fire into it, or at least half your army. So the Hellhound can fire into these pink zones with the blue X's. Your Lehman Russ Exterminator can fire into the right side one. The middle one right here, unfortunately, it can't fire into. It can fire someone into the left side one. The Baneblade, from the options it has, it can fire someone into here, kind of deep into here. It can fire all the way into here. The Baneblade pretty much covers all of no man's land in one turn if it needs to. That's great. So now your Hellhound, let's say it fires on something in this blue ruin right here. The Hellhound fires at it. The Exterminator fires at it with Withering Hail. And then your Baneblade fires at it. Whatever's in here, I don't care if it's the biggest knight in the game, it's dead. In one turn, it is dead. So whatever the Khazar can fire at, they can get either strip cover, bonus AP, or both. And that's really amazing on Khazarkin getting bonus AP. You can't really get that with stratagems because they're all tank stratagems, but you use the stratagems on the tanks, and then the tanks buff the rest of your army, including your infantry. So here, whatever the Chimera can shoot at, either the Hellhound is going to strip cover, or the Exterminator is going to add AP, or both. So the way we position, all the tanks are supporting each other. And now we haven't talked about the Scout Sentinels. We're going to start one right here. It has a 9-inch scout move, so it's not going to overlap with anything. It has a 9-inch scout move. Just scout it out, use it as a bait unit. If the enemy fires on it, you are, see, right here, this is a firing lane. You move your Scout Sentinel into your own firing lane. The enemy fires on it. That's attacks that are not going into your Baneblade. You fire back at them and you destroy them. And it's very difficult to trade into a Scout Sentinel and trade up. Scout Sentinel is 55 frickin' points. And we have two of them. So if one of them dies, whoop-de-doo. Big deal, right? So the Taurox moves out 6 inches, and then the Scout Sentinel and that ruin kind of just swings out and moves up behind it or enters this ruin where the Baneblade wants to go with its scout move. That way, the turn after that, it has a 10-inch move. It's a squadron unit, so it can make that auto advance of 6 inches. And so your Scout Sentinel can move out and be out of the way before any other tanks come. So make sure that your moving order is correct, right? And finally, we have, okay, we talked about the mortar squad. We have the Lord Solar command blob. The command blob is not big enough due to having to stack at the end. Some people dogbone. I just have a half-inch gap because these are 1-inch infantry units. So if you keep a half-inch gap between 3 of the models at the end, then the last model and the third model in, so 1, 2, 3, this model is within 2 inches. So instead of dog boning, I just stack 3 at the ends, and you cannot cover the entirety of your deployment zone. That's fine. We want to make sure that we're not having Death Shroud Terminators come in next to the Baneblade. So we're going to screen hard on this side. 6-inch deep strike screen, and the right side we're going to leave open because who really cares if they drop in all the way here, right? Your Baneblade, look at where the Baneblade is. All you got to do is move back down to where it was and then fire at them. Not a big deal. And by moving down, it's not like you're giving up firing lanes because you can still fire here, you can still fire here. You just shift up and down and just fire at whatever needs to. So screening, is that a big deal? No, it's really not a big deal here. But if we're gonna screen more to the left side because that's where the Baneblade's gonna want to be. Now, you do have this thing with Lord Solar, where you can redeploy up to 3 Astra Militarum units. And so we come to this deployment. And you can tell that it's pretty much exactly the same with a couple differences. A Dorn is in one of the option spots, and the other option is right here if you really want to. If you really want to go heavy on the right side. Chimera is in exactly the same place. You'll see the mortars have changed, and I'll explain that. Scout Sentinel, it's just shifted to the right. And the Taurox moved from here to here. So the Baneblade is in a lot safer position here. And the Taurox wants to be close to the Baneblade because it wants to clear out the enemies that are going to attack the Baneblade, right? You're going for anti-tank infantry. So your Kazarkin, they're focusing on Exalted 8 bound, things like that. You're focusing on enemy super heavies or enemy support units, right? You're trying to destroy their Leman Russ exterminators. You're trying to pretty much neuter the enemy if the enemy has a Caladius grav tank or a fire prism and you can take one of them out instantly on turn one. That's what your Taurox is there for. That way, there's less shit going into your Baneblade, and if there's less shit going into your Baneblade, that means that it survives longer to do damage. Okay. Hellhound, exactly same place, right? So the Baneblade shifted over to a safe spot. Taurox kind of moved to the right with him. Okay, there's two. And your Leman Russ was where your Taurox was, and it moved to where the Baneblade was. There's three. You could technically go from this deployment if you put the Rogaldorn on the left side, or let's say it's the last unit, right? Your Rogaldorn is the last unit you're trying to deploy. You just slap him over on the left side, right? If you know you're going to want to redeploy. And look at that. There's not really a lot of change in the deployment. Everything is almost exactly the same. And so what I'm trying to say is you can completely redeploy like this. And this completely changes the play style and the feel because previously you are pretty much contesting three different objectives, right? I mean, there are ways to kind of shift your army to the right, like put the Baneblade towards the middle, move the Taurox over. There's a way to shift your army to the right, but you're generally going in a straight line and just pushing up. Whereas in this deployment, you are very heavy focusing on the right side. You can see most of all the action is on the right side of the map. You're letting this one go. Why? Oh, I'm going to explain that very shortly. Let's talk about the Baneblade first and the Chimera. The Baneblade over here, it can move 12 inches and go up to here. If you have the barrel turned this way in the start of the game, when it moves 12 inches, the tip of the barrel barely can stick out. Okay. And the Chimera now does the same thing, moves 6 inches up, but instead of hiding your mortars, this time you're moving your mortars out to past where the Baneblade wants to be. So this takes a little bit of pre-planning, right? But look at where the mortars are. If anything gets past your Chimera and your Taurox, now it's hitting the mortars. Any melee army is going to have to go all the way around to hit that Baneblade. And look, you have a Sentinel here that can move out. So the Taurox moves up, the Sentinel moves up behind it with its scout move, and then next turn, the Sentinel can be placed right here. Nothing is tagging your Baneblade in melee. That's very safe. From here, the Baneblade can fire all the way into the top right corner. It can fire into where I have the Taurox here. You fire down that firing lane, and it can cover the entire, well, nearly the entire middle objective, and it can cover nearly the entire left-hand objective. If the opponent wants to take this objective, they have to get within the Baneblade's firing lane unless they're towing the objective right up there. And that's why we keep like a Leman Russ Exterminator and we keep a Sentinel on this side. That way, if there's a model kind of towing that ruin, just barely trying to do something, you can destroy it and shoot it off. But this really prevents the enemy from being here. You can also, instead of deploying the Rogo here, you can deploy the Rogo here. And in this deployment, you can get shot from like the middle of the map, which is not a good place to be because your Baneblade doesn't even have to go up here. Your Baneblade can just roll forward, stick its gun barrel out, and fire all the way into this firing lane, which is where the enemy is going to want to be to fire at your Rogel Dorn. So your Rogel Dorn is really safe here on the first turn, unless they come all the way out into your ruin and then fire. So it's very hard to get destroyed on the first turn. But what we can do from here is we can counterattack. So this is an okay place to put a Rogel Dorn. It kind of just holds the position here and discourages the enemy from getting onto this ruin. And if there's ever a need to score something, then the Rogel can get on the objective. Now you have a Tech Priest, 45-point unit. You can push that Tech Priest and perform an action on the objective. There is nothing telling you that you can't perform an action on the objective if you've already gave the invul and repair to the Rogel Dorn. So you could actually move the Rogel Dorn out, maybe kind of stage it, and then use the Tech Priest Engine Seer after you already added the invul and then get onto the objective and score something. 45-point unit. It has loan up within 3 inches of a vehicle. So the enemy's going to have to want to come within 12 inches. And now the enemy has a dilemma. They have a choice to make. Are you going to destroy the Rogodorn, or are you going to deny the enemy VP from primary and secondary by killing that Tech Priest Engine Seer? Given that issue, it's like, do I kill that 45-point unit and deny points, or do I attack the Rogodorn? You know? So there's some choices the enemy has to make there. The Leman Russ here, you could fire all the way into here just from the deployment, so it's not a very safe deployment for the Leman Russ in particular, but being here, just like how the Baneblade had options earlier, you can actually make a normal move, stick your barrel out, and this is a Leman Russ Exterminator. I just downloaded whatever top view I had, and so the Rogel Dorn has the, what are they called, the twin linked cannons, but we're actually gonna bring the oppressor cannon, and this is a Vanquisher looking model, but we're actually gonna have an exterminator. But the exterminator's barrel also sticks out past the hull, so you can do the same thing with an exterminator as well. From here, it can fire and add AP onto targets on the right side of the map. And in the middle, if you move towards the middle here, you can fire into this left side kill zone right here. So the exterminator has a lot of options from here. And it's in a position where if needed, in 2 turns, it can get onto that left side objective or into the middle objective. And this Leman Russ for a cheap 180 points can be scoring something so that a Baneblade doesn't have to, for example, or your Rogel doesn't have to. So having this Exterminator right in the middle gives you options where it can be supporting the Rogel Dorn if it's firing at something in the middle here, or it can be supporting whatever the Baneblade's firing. There's a lot of options here, right? The Hellhound goes to the same place. You're trying to flush guys out. Now you have an extra Taurox here to flush guys out. And this Taurox here, you're going to have to use Crash Through because, see, you're going straight through that ruined wall. Why? Because it's a more direct way of moving. Now, you don't have to use Crash Through. If there's no opponents on the right side here, you can actually just kind of take a detour and you don't have to go this far. So Crash Through is not something you have to use. It's something you can use if needed to get to the furthest reaches of the enemy deployment zone. So let's say they're staging a bunch of units here. They haven't screened the front of their deployment zone. You just drive right through there, drop off some Kazarkin, and destroy them turn one. So let's say they put a Gladiator Lancer. It's gone, turn one. Um, so you can do that, and you don't have to do that. You can save a CP, go around, and hit something that's actually staged behind here. There's no reason at all for you to use Crash Through. So here, the Chimera, just with its scout move, allows it to get into relevant spots to deny the opponent from taking right side objective, to screen your mortars, which is also screening your Baneblade. And if it has move, 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 you can start shooting at guys behind the ruin here. And when you got up to 3 different medium tanks. Well, the Taurox is not a medium tank, but you have a medium tank, you have a medium transport, you have a Taurox with Kazarkin. You have a lot of stuff that could be hitting whatever is staging in here. And on the left side, it doesn't matter if they stage there, great. You can play your Rogaldorn aggressively, or you can not play your Rogaldorn aggressively, let them come out, try to score something, and then counterattack with the Baneblade, the Rogaldorn, and the Exterminator. Right? The Exterminator from this position covers the entire objective here on the left side. So, even though you don't look like you have a lot of force here, like even if you put your Rogaldorn on the right side and kind of played like move blocking in the middle and use your Baneblade in the back, provide fire support to both the middle and the left side objective, you can totally play that. And whatever steps onto the objective, you destroy it. Guess what? When their turn comes around, they have no OC and therefore they don't score primary. So this is a playstyle you can play that just straight up denies them. You touch the objective, you die. Next turn, you put something else on the objective, you die. You're never going to score primary because you're gonna have to chew through 4 units, right? You gotta chew through the Taurox and the Kazarkin, the Chimera and the Ogryn, so that's 4 units already. So 5 units actually, because you have to chew through the mortars, and then you have to out OC. You have to get more than 8 OC to out OC that Baneblade. So this right side ruin is yours, and there's no way in hell the enemy is gonna take this away from you, right? There's 5 rounds in a game. They have to chew through 5 units. They will never ever put a single. They will never take this objective away from you. Maybe they battle shock you. They force you to take battle shock tests. Well, you have 3 units, up to 3 units, holding this objective. If one of them passes the battle shock test, well, guess what? You still have the fucking objective, right? All right. So we got that cleared. The Baneblade, by being here, covers pretty much the entire middle and the left side objective. So this is 42.5 inches all the way to this left side objective. So your main gun, auto cannons, last cannons can fire all on this left side objective. And you could pretty much fire with all your weapons into this middle objective. Everything, maximum firepower. So, you know, your auto cannons need that AP, right? Your main gun needs that AP. Last cannons, the AP can help it, but it doesn't necessarily need it against a lot of different targets. But the Exterminator being able to cover the entire left side objective and get rapid fire and be in range to use multi-meltas means that whatever gets onto this objective is dead. Whatever touches that middle is dead. And if you need to score something, guess what? You can move your Lehman Russ up, score something. You have a Hellhound here. If there's no enemy to flush out here, it could just move, straight up park on the middle objective and score whatever you want. Hellhound is freaking durable. And once it goes down, you have the Lehman Russ. That it doesn't have to sit in this ruin the whole game. It can come out and actually score something and perform actions. Look, you have your command squad here too. It doesn't have to just sit down here, right? At bottom of turn 3, you're going to want to start moving it out, Throw some move on it and try to get it up. That way, by turn 5, you're doing something in no man's land, right? So, this big Lord Solar blob, it doesn't have to sit in the back, too. So, we have enough units that if something needs to be scored, it's gonna get scored. We have enough firepower in the right place so that if something needs to get destroyed on any of the three objectives, it's getting destroyed. We have enough speed so that turn one, you could be in their deployment zone. You can have freaking what? You can have your whole army firing into this zone, right? You have this that tank, the mortars. You got even the Rogel Thorn. You got the Lehman Russ. Anything in here is dead, right? So anything here is dead, but you can't really fit too much in here, right? So if they see you deploying like this, they might pile a lot of their army here on this left side. And you know what? That's fine. You know why? Because this map, the way the deployment is, it looks like it's up and down, right? You just changed the flow of the battle because now you've split it. Instead of having a horizontal split, right? The enemy's up and you're down, you have a vertical split. You're to the right plus the middle objective, and the enemy is to the left. And if that happens, it's perfectly fine. You know why? Look at what's in the middle, right? When you look at it vertically, look what's in the middle. A Hellhound, which is a really good Overwatch. Cheap. You have a Lehman Russ Exterminator, one of your cheaper units, you know. It kind of sucks to lose it, but if you do lose it, it's not the end of the world. Your Torox here, if there's nothing to hit here, or you can take it out with a bunch of other units, you can move it equally as far over to the left. If you really needed to, you could park your Taurox on the objective and make a line of Kazarkin. It might be stupid, but you can actually make a line of Kazarkin, give themselves, take cover. That way they go from their base 4-up save to a 3-up base save, right? With take cover. And you could just use your Kazarkin as screening units if you really want to. And so they got to chew through the Kazarkin, they got to get rid of the Taurox, and then the Hellhound, and maybe the Lehman Russ Exterminator. And then they might be able to get on that middle objective if your Rogel Dorn doesn't come out and counterattack. You see? There are a lot of different ways to play this, but these are the two places you can deploy the super heavy. Exposed to firepower here, or very safe. And if you're going with the first deployment, you are playing the game how GW intended, up and down. And you're just a big wave. You're just pushing everything up. The Taurox is going up. The Rogel's going up. The Hellhound's going up. The Chimera's going up. You're so fast because your Taurox has a data sheet ability. Advance and disembark. Your auto advance 6 inches, disembark. Bam, you're getting hit by Kazarkin. You're getting mined in the face. You're getting grenades thrown at you. You know what I mean? And then your Rogel Dorn is, advance and shoot, right? It's going 16 inches. And you can still give itself take aim and it's going to be doing a lot of damage. The Chimera, it's a lot slower than the Taurox, but you're using the scout trick. You're using your Catachan mortars to get 6 inches up the board, throwing the Ogrins in, and now you're within range to blast away with your Ripper guns, right? You're going to fuck shit up with your Chimera, right? And then your Baneblade. If you really want to like be super aggressive, you can just push it right onto that middle objective and be like, "Fuck you, man, come take it." Right? Look at the position of the tanks. Right? If that Baneblade goes right to the middle, the Exterminator is screening the right side of it. The Rogel can be screening the left side of it. The Hellhound is screening the front of it. It's surrounded by tanks. That Baneblade is safe. Right? So you could be super aggressive, you know? You know where the enemy wants to stage. You deploy so that if you go first and they're not staged, you hit them in their deployment zone. If you go second and they still decide to stage in the ruin, guess what? You still hit them hard. It doesn't matter who goes first. You're hitting them hard either way. That's why I call this list my Speed Striker list. I don't care where you're staging. My go turn comes before your go turn. And guess what? I have 2 go turns. You know why? Because I have my transports. I have my Chimera. I have my Taurox. I have my Hellhound, right? I send them all up first. I can send my Rogel Dorn, Lehman Russ. They all go out. Freaking Scout Sentinels, dude. You could If you go first with your scout move, you can move across the whole freaking map. Like you have this crazy, crazy first wave, right? You're leaving maybe 700 points behind. Everything is coming out and just slamming. And you get to pick and choose what you're killing, right? Because you're a ranged army. Anything that can be seen, you're destroying. It's like how many units? Like what can you actually hide behind this top right, behind this ruin, behind the center ruin? Right? Because you still have angles into some of behind that center ruin. So there's not a lot of places the enemy can hide, right? So you're just flowing up the board, super aggressive, super not safe, and you're saying, if I go first, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take out all your anti-tank units, and then I'm going to push up with my heavies, and there's nothing you can do about it. If the enemy goes first and they stage, then you're like, I'm just going to destroy whatever you just staged, and you're not going to get a go turn because you're going to be dead before your go turn. So this is very aggressive. You don't want to do this against Tau, against Gunline, Necrons. There are certain armies you really don't want to do this. I would not do this against Eldari even. This is way too aggressive. But against things like melee pressure armies, you're the pressure. Why? Because you have scouts. You have 2 scout sentinels with scout. You have Kazarkin with scout. You have your Catachans that give your Chimera scout, right? You have a lot of scout units. You have Gaunt's Ghost. You can infiltrate block if you really want to, right? So you have the priority. You have the first turn. You set the speed of how fast the game goes because you're playing Hammer of the Emperor. You are the hammer. And in this deployment, you're just screwing with the enemy. You're like, I'm not going to play up and down. If the enemy, let's say, spreads out all his forces, what you could do is literally redeploy to this safe deployment right here. You can redeploy here and be like, I know you spread out, but guess what? All my units I'm gonna have a force concentration where 70-80% of my army is gonna hit your right side. You're gonna lose half your army in one turn. And then next turn, what are you gonna do? You can't get onto any of the objectives because I have more firepower and I will destroy you. This is the second one. You know what I mean? The first one, you kind of deploy like this. You're all spread out, like a typical guard army. The enemy spreads out. Well, guess what? Lord Solar lets you redeploy. You just redeploy 3 of your units, and suddenly it looks like this. And you have extreme force concentration on the right side, and you have 1 or 2 tanks on the left side. You don't care. Why? Because you're denying them from taking that left side objective just because of how this map is designed, right? And so you can do tricksy things with Lord Solar, Lord Solar, Gon's Ghost, the Hammer of the Emperor detachment. You can do tricksy things. And I know this is supposed to be a super heavy video, but this is like a super heavy video. Like I'm showing you where you can deploy, where you got lines of sight, but it's also a basic screening tutorial and a basic transport tutorial. How you use scouts to make your chimeras go almost as fast as Tauroxes. How the hell do you use Tauroxes? How fast can they actually go? Well, I just showed you. You go all the way from your deployment zone into the middle of their deployment zone, and with the disembark, you can hit anything anywhere on turn one, right? So this is not just a super heavy deployment tutorial. I am showing you how to stack tanks. What I mean by stack tanks is what I told you about having the Lehman Russ Exterminator, the Hellhound, the Scout Sentinels in the right place so that wherever you need cover stripped, it's gonna get cover stripped. Wherever you need bonus AP, you're gonna have bonus AP, right? So, you know, this is the general idea of how you play Hammer of the Emperor with a super heavy. And Lord Solar on the map, it doesn't look like he's doing shit, but I swear, check out this redeployment trick, right? You've just changed the entire you've changed the playing of the game. If the enemy doesn't have this redeploy, if they don't have uppy downy, if they're not very mobile like Eldar are, they're just they're screwed. They're sitting ducks. You know what I mean? With your movement and your redeploy, your access to infiltrators, to scouts, like you can destroy them. Your 6-inch auto advance and shoot. you could destroy them on turn one. You just flip the table on them and be like, ha, I'm not playing 3 objectives. I'm going to focus on 2 objectives, and you can sit in your deployment zone and get fucked because that's what I'm going to do on the first turn. I'm going to move all my units and I'm going to fuck you and tear you a new one, right? Anyway, um it's very exciting. It's very exciting. And this is the first of many videos. I intend on doing all of the deployments on all of the GW terrain layouts. And I might be changing my list a little bit around, and I might show you a vehicle stat checklist that I built. And there are some other lists. I have Bane Sword lists and stuff like that, which functionally and theoretically should work. It's just when you start putting it on a map, you kind of realize, ooh, you might want to take a different unit. This one's not fast enough. Or this unit, it's a good unit. You know, it's a popular unit, but it's not doing what I need it to do. And so you start changing units around, you know. But for this particular GW terrain layout 5 on Dawn of War deployment, the Speed Striker super heavy list is very functional, as you can see. It's very tricksy, it's fast, and you have a really good capability to screen and to just pick off enemy threats before they become threatening. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something. I hope that I helped you visualize a lot of different things, right? The range of the tanks, the different firing lanes, even how big the Baneblade actually is on the tabletop. This is about the size that it is, right? And what kind of turret tricks you can do, right? Because storm swords, not Bane swords, storm swords, Bane hammers, hell hammers, they have short little barrels. You can't do tricks that Bane blades can. The Bane blade has a long barrel and it has a turret, so you can place it in a lot of different places, like I showed you. So before I end this video, I'm gonna show you one thing because a lot of people they're like, oh, super heavies are bad, or oh, I love super heavies. Well, and a lot of the YouTubers will talk about, oh, this is how to build a super heavy list, but nobody actually talks about how do you actually use a freaking super heavy. Well, I'm telling you, man. I tell you what. Look here, man. The way you play the Baneblade is you park that shit backwards, all right? You know why? Look at that silhouette, right? You look at it. The barrel does not stick out of the front. But guess what you can do? You could turn the turret backwards and now your barrel's sticking out of ruins, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how you play the Baneblade. You play it backwards. Nobody's ever told me that. Nobody's ever told you that. Because I've watched like every guard video on YouTube. I'm on Reddit and nobody ever talks about how to play the Baneblade. Why? Because it's not intuitive. Look at the Lehman Russ Vanquisher. When it's pointed forward, the barrel sticks out. You can do all kinds of cool tricks playing it normally, right? Look at the Rogel Dorn. Same thing, right? Almost every tank you can play normally, right? The Baneblade you can't. You have to play it backwards. So like I said, that was the last thing I'm gonna go over this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and I hope that you learned a lot from it. And if you are a avid Baneblade player, if you love guard super heavies, then definitely give me a like and a subscribe and tune in for more videos. I can't upload all the time due to poor service when I'm, you know, out of an area of service. And I'm also a 3D modeler as well as having my main job. So I'm freaking busy all the time. But when I can, I will go through every deployment and make a video on it. So follow the channel and good luck in your next game in GW Terrain Layout 5 on the Dawn of War deployment using Hammer of the Emperor. All right. Praise the God Emperor of all mankind. Praise the God of all machines, the Omniscience, and have a great day.